Alright, guys, welcome back. Let's start chapter 1, Introduction to Sampling. In this chapter, I'd like to give a heads up on some of the technical terms or some of the division in the sample survey. Every time when we conduct a sample survey, we need to set an objective. The reason why is we need to ask what is the purpose of conducting the sample survey. After all, we like to describe about the population using some of the data that we can collect. For example, we want to describe the population of Hong Kong people. For example, we like to talk about what is the average income of Hong Kong people. So we use mean to describe about the population. And with that mean, the average income, what is the distribution? What is the dispersion of that distribution of that means? And some of the proportion of the data we collect to describe about that. Since we are not going to conduct or to collect all of the data from the entire population, we can only have limited resources in budget or time. Then we collect a sample, which is a smaller number of data as compared to the entire population. We use a sample to describe about the population. And in this sample survey course, we are discussing about different sampling scheme, namely is the simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified random sampling, and cluster sampling methods. Okay, so some of the technical terms I'd like to say, let's look at an example when we describe using the usage of the technical terms. For example, we want to conduct a sample survey to determine the public sentiment towards a bond issue in the upcoming election. Okay, this is a very US American examples. Usually, before the election, people want to know about how people feel on the bond issue, because the bond issue might affect the economy by the monetary policies, right? So we like to know about the public sentiments, what they think of the bond issue. Are they in favor or they are not in favor of the bond issue? Then we're not going to ask everybody or the registered voter. We just want to conduct a sample survey, ask a smaller number of people, and to see their opinions. So we set the objective would be to estimate the proportion of voters in the community who favor the bond issue. Okay. Elements always refer to the object on which the measurement is taken. So in this case, an element would be the registered voter in the community. The registered voter is the element in this example, but not every citizen in the community. Why? Because we are concerning about the upcoming election. So we want to get the opinion of the registered voter instead of all the citizen in the community. So beware. When you try to get the measurement from the interviewers, you need to make sure that we are targeting the right people. So the element would be the registered voter. We want to get their answer of whether they're in favor of the bond issue or not in favor. So the measurement would be to ask them whether they are in favor. If the answer is yes, then we put, for example, we use 1 and 0 to indicate them for better calculation, easier calculations. So if the answer is yes, then we put 1. If the answer is no, we put 0. Then at the end of the sample survey, we just add up all of the answer and divide that sum to the total number of answers. Then we get the estimated proportion of the voters who favor the bond issue, right? A population is a collection of elements about which we wish to make an inference. So this is what more of what we want to describe about the population, the target population. That would be all registered voters. Okay. Sampling units are non-overlapping collection of elements from the population. A sampling unit in this case would be the registered voter, individual registered voter in my sample survey. So you may ask, what's the difference between the elements and the sampling units? In this example, they're the same. We are both referring to each registered voter. But sometimes in different sampling scheme, it might be more convenient or less costly to sample a group of elements. For example, a household. If you can imagine another example, if we like to get we want to estimate the average household income, then we just collectively collect the data for the household income, like adding up of the household members and divided by the number of persons, right? So in that case, the household would be the sampling unit, not each individual within the household. Okay, so depends on a different situation or different sampling scheme. Sampling units could be the same as element, or that could be a group of elements. So back to this example, each individual registered voter would be the sampling unit. If we obtain the whole list of registered voter, then we call that a frame. So a frame is a list of the sampling units. If we have a list of the household, back to the household income example, if we have a list of the household, then we call that a frame for the household. Usually we can obtain the list of the household from the telephone directory, city directory, or we can get it from the administrative office for the census data. But make sure that if we're referring to the frame that consists of the list of the household, the frame has to be up to date. Because nowadays if we just obtain the list from the telephone directory, that might not be so up to date, because some of the household they don't even have a fixed line, so the name would not be shown on the telephone directory. What will happen if we don't have a comprehensive frame? Then we would end up having coverage error, because we don't have everyone. Supposedly, they need to be selected or to be randomly selected to be included in the sample. But if the name is not shown on the full list, then they can't be selected, right? So we need to be careful to avoid any gap between the frame and the population. We need to make sure the frame or the sample could have a good representative picture to describe about the population. So the frame is the list of the sampling units. Then a sample is a collection of sampling units drawn from the frame. So if we have the list of the registered voter, back to the example, we randomly choose a few of the registered voter to be our sample. We ask them the question whether they are in favor of the bond issue, and then we estimate the sample estimate, use the sample estimate to describe the population estimate. Okay, and just say a couple of points that usually we use a capital N to represent the population size. We use a lowercase n to indicate the little n to represent the sample size. Okay, then you may usually see that the sample size, little n, must always be less than equal to the capital N, the population size. the sample size is less than the population size, but if the sample size equal to the population size, then we are doing a census, a full coverage of the population. Okay?